Okay, thank you, Dr. Suren. It's a great pleasure and honor to be host of this webinar. Uh, Aibong, Manakam, and Assalamu alaikum. I have here two veterans in their own fields. Their formidable contribution to the national question in Sri Lanka is commendable, and uh, the uncompromising political positions that was taken by both of
A
them
fair amount of stuff.
uh, made them persona non grata by the consequence of different governments, so to say. We salute you for your sacrifices you made
Working off, that's hard.
and the
That's it.
inconveniences, even ostracization you faced from your community. Without much ado,
Speak.
let me welcome Dr. Brian Sanivaratna, a long-standing friend of Tamils who stood by us through thick and thin. I came across Dr. Brian in mid-80s when he visited Tamil Information Center in mid-80s. And
I did just now, not now.
his written submissions were very valuable at the time. He was a pioneer who gave us VCDs, which took the campaign to a next level. He is honored with his titles, not only with the academic titles, but as a champion of human rights. And he was a strategist, and he has written extensively, and he influenced the activism of Tamil national struggle. We welcome Dr. Brian without much ado. Dr. Brian.
Hello?
Yes,
Can you hear
Dr.
me?
Brian, the floor is yours. We can hear you well.
I want to move this a bit.
Yes, yeah, they can hear.
Dr. Brian, we can
They
hear
can
you
hear you.
well. The floor is yours.
Okay, we can start.
Right?
We can start.
Dr. Brian, you can start.
We can start.
Right?
Yeah.
What? Speak? Admit, enter the ventil room. View.
Can you hear us, Dr. Brian? We are waiting for you to start.
The past and current human rights issues, risks, and solutions for Sri Lanka. I'm Brian Seniratna from Brisbane, Australia. I will speak for half an hour and will be followed by Dr. Lionel Bopage before having half an hour for discussions. I'm ethically a Sinhalese, a doctor of medicine, and not a politician, but I come from a family that has produced two Sri Lankan prime ministers and a president, all of whom have sent the country to a failed state. I do not support the Mahavamsa. I think the entire Mahavamsa is virulently anti-Tamil that I have no time for. I'm a senator in the transnational government of Tamil Eelam. In 2018, I was awarded the Nelson Mandela Memorial Award for outstanding contributions to the Tamil struggles for justice. Although I'm not speaking on behalf of the TGTE, I cannot say things that are contrary to the TGTE. I have published two books on Sri Lanka, Sri Lanka Sexual Violence of the Tamils by the Armed Forces, the second edition in 2017, and the second one, The Struggle for Justice of the Tamil People of Sri Lanka, the second edition of 2020. If you want these books and you cannot get them at a bookseller, send me an email to bsenviratna@gmail.com and I will send you the PDF version by email without charge. You can then have them printed or you can print it yourself. Each book is about 260 pages. My concern is that young expatriate Tamils know little about the problems faced by the, the Tamils. To help them to understand the problems, I have recorded a dozen DVDs, which I can forward to you if you send me your email. Let me get on with what I intended to say. What exists in the Sri Lanka North and East is a military stroke police state. There's an absolute need for a civilian administration. The north and east of Sri Lanka is not under the Sri Lankan government, but under the Sri Lankan military and police. It is a military stroke police dictatorship where the military and police can do what they want with no accountability. This has now gone on for more than 10 years and will go on for the foreseeable future if there is no international pressure on the Sri Lankan government. This pressure will have to be generated by those outside Sri Lanka. It may even be a violation of the Sri Lankan constitution since there is no provision for setting up a military stroke police state in a part of the island. This will have to be challenged by constitutional experts outside Sri Lanka. Dealing with the size of the military and in the north and east of Sri Lanka. There is a massive military presence in the Sri Lanka north and east. According to the International Institute for Strategic Studies, the military balance, the Sri Lankan military has 255,000 active members. This is larger than Saudi Arabia, which has 227,000, France 204,000, Israel 170,000, and the United Kingdom 147,000. This miserably poor country with no external enemies has 255,000 military members. It is outrageous. The ratio of soldiers to civilians in the north and the east is 1:5. In Vavuniya, 1:3. Pearl, that is a Tamil advocacy group in Washington, D.C., and the Ajayalam Center for Policy Research in a publication Normalizing the Abnormal, says that the ratio of military to civilians in Mullaitivu is 1:2. There is no place in the world that is so highly militarized. The military and police are responsible for all the serious violations of human rights of the Tamil people in the area. International intervention is mandatory for humanitarian reasons. If nothing is done, the Tamil people in the area will simply wither away since there is no means of survival, no land to cultivate, no sea to fish, no jobs, and unable to set up a business since all of these have been taken over by the armed forces. The Tamil tigers have been crushed. The question is the justification for such a massive military presence. Who is the enemy? Since there is no justification, the military must be withdrawn and the police recruited from the local Tamil population. This is imperative and urgent and will not happen without international pressure. The military getting into non-military activity. The armed forces have gone into non-military commercial activity. They are engaged in large-scale property developments, constructive projects, and business ventures, such as travel agencies, holiday resorts, restaurants, and numerous cafes in the north and the east. The military has no place in business activity. This non-military activity is having a serious impact on civilian life and must be stopped. This will not happen without international pressure on the Sri Lankan government. The military intervention in local civilian economy. The military intervention is one, operating its own businesses, two, employing civilians in non-military and civilian society projects, and three, getting into private sector investment. Dealing with one or two of these, military operated businesses. Since the end of the armed conflict in May 2009, The military has its own commercial activities. They range from agriculture and animal husbandry projects, tourism, and commerce, agriculture, and animal husbandry projects. Of 13 farms operated by the military, 6 are in the northeast. These farms grow paddy, corn, vegetables, fruits, coconuts, sugarcane, peanuts, oranges, erica nuts, cinnamon, banana, jack, and seasonal crops. They produce dairy products, poultry, and cattle. The produce is sold well below market price, making it impossible for the local farmers to compete. Tourism and war museums. In Mullaitivu alone, the military ran at least 5 hotels and resorts. 2 were opened in 2012, a mere 3 years after the end of the armed conflict, in an area where hundreds of Tamils are still looking for their loved ones. 2 resorts are located in the Nantikada Lagoon, which provide visitors with a war tourism experience directed by the military and from their perspective. All the monuments and museums carry signs stating that the armed conflict was a humanitarian rescue operation by the military to save Tamil lives from the TTE. There is no mention of the tens of thousands of Tamil civilians casualties. The military getting into education and schools. Of serious concern is the military getting into education to teach military designed curricula. There is also concern that the military is appointing technique teachers with higher salaries to teach these curricula. The military does not have the training to get to these areas and teach children who are at the receiving end of all this activity, and they may suffer. The absolute need to have human rights monitors in the Tamil areas. Where there is a violation of human rights, such as rape by the armed forces, police, or Tamil military groups working with the government, there is nowhere that the victims, a Tamil woman or girl, can lodge a complaint. To go to the police, not only useless, but it may be dangerous. In my book on sexual violence, I have said that if the victim goes to the police or the army camp, there is a risk that the victim or whoever accompanies her getting raped or the details taken for a midnight visit by the police and armed forces. The claim that international human rights groups such as the Amnesty International, Human Rights Watch, and International Crisis Group are allowed into the country is not good enough. If and stroke when these organizations visit the Tamil areas and they are accompanied by members of the armed forces or police, notes are taken as to who was visited and what was said. This happened even when the former UN Human Rights High Commissioner, Navanita Pillai, visited the area. Before her visit, people were told that any complaints to her would be noted and the consequences would be serious. There is no alternative to having a set place banned by Tamil civilians to whom civilians of victims of human rights abuse could complain without fear. It will take years before this serious problem is resolved. It will not be resolved until the armed forces are removed from the area and Sinhalese police are replaced by Tamil police. The UN High Commissioner for Human Rights acts. On 27 January 2021, just 2 weeks ago, the UN High Commissioner for Human Rights, Michelle Bachelet, issued a damning report on Sri Lanka's human rights situation, urging the international community to take strong action to prevent another human rights tragedy unfolding in Sri Lanka, including the targeted sanctions and punitive actions against perpetrators. The report contains a devastating and unprecedented critique of the handling of human rights in Sri Lanka. and its recommendations have escalated the possible intervention of the Council beyond anything that has been suggested to date. There's a lot more to say about Michelle Bachelet's statement, but for lack of time, mm, I'm giving it a miss. The High Commissioner urged the Council to support a dedicated capacity to correct and to preserve evidence for the for future courts accountability process. What how now happens? Remember that the UN Human Rights Council has some 47 members who have to act. They could decide not to do anything. That would be the last. They could, irrespective of what the High Commissioner says, or they could refer the matter to Human Rights uh, Council. What do you do? For a start, you can write to the High Commissioner. Google will give you the address and that you have, uh, and to thank her for what she has done or tried to do. You can check whether the country that you live in uh, is represented in the council. And if it is, you can see your representative. One way or the other, you must act. Human Rights Watch endorsed the recommendations of the High Commissioner uh, and uh, stated that the UN will lose credibility if it fails to adopt a tough resolution at the 46th UNHCR session this March. I have seen the provisional draft resolution and it is anything but expected. Crimes Beyond Belief. PIAC is an independent non-profit law and policy organization based in Sydney, Australia. It is funded by New South Wales. PIAC, PIAC's International Crimes Evidence Project, ICEP, published a major 235-page report on the 6th of February 2014, Sri Lanka Island of Impunity, investigation into international crimes. It's one of the most damning indictments of which has gone on and is still going on in Sri Lanka. ICEP was told by a Sri Lankan security officer that he had personally participated with his officers in the gang rape of a female LTTE who had surrendered. The security officer said that after they had raped each woman, the woman was tied with one leg to a tree and the other leg to a tractor, which was then driven away from the tree. This resulted in the woman's body being torn apart. Bishop Desmond Tutu, who saw this, said, open, I quote, the sheer viciousness and brutality of the sexual violence is staggering, as is the racial verbose abuse by the torturers and rapists in the Sri Lankan security force. Singalization. There has been a massive relocation of Sinhalese from the Sinhala areas to the Tamil areas by the government. What is not widely known is that when the Sinhala military and the police who have quit their jobs are being relocated, that will be in the north and the east with their families. The result will be a massive increase in the number of Sinhalese in the north and the east. If this continues, the north and the east will be dominated by Sinhalese. This will not be reversible as we saw in Ampare in the east, which was the Tamil area which has now been Sinhalese. The long-term objective of accelerated Sinhalization of the Tamil areas is to destroy the Tamil homeland and establish a mono-ethnic identity throughout the island, a Sinhala Buddhist nation. Buddhistization. Buddhist temples and structures are proliferating in an area where there are no Buddhists. The only Buddhists are members of the armed forces and police. What often happens is that a Bo tree is planted in an area which is then declared a Buddhist sacred site, and a Buddhist temple is then erected. The British Tamil Forum, BTF, has published an excellent book, Proliferating Buddhist Structures in the Tamil Homelands, Sowing the Seeds of Disharmony. I urge you to contact BTF and get a copy. I've got 5 more minutes, I think. Education in Jaffna is in chaos. Dr. Das Somasundra, professor of psychiatry, Jaffna, delivered an important lecture, A Lost Generation of Tamil Youth. What he said was alarming. 70% of students fail the GCE grade 5 annually, and 50% fail the GCE O-level examination. Of those who sit for the A-level, only 15% enter the university. Even the few who enter the university are not assured of a bright future. The university system that was doing reasonably well till the early 1980s has deteriorated markedly due to general chaos of war, poor resources, poor support from the state, and the loss of academics and teachers with the general brain drain. This must-read publication is on the net. The difficulty in getting into university is compounded by the fact that large numbers of Sinhalese from the south are getting into the Jaffna University. Some of them have the qualifications to enter universities. Others are getting in because they know, within quotes, the right people. As someone who has been a senior lecturer in medicine in Peradeniya in the late 1960s, I'm well aware that a significant number of medical students were Tamils, mainly from Jaffna. There is no place that I know of in any part of the world that has produced more professionals than Jaffna. As such, what is going on in Jaffna today is an absolute disaster. Jaffna will take years, if ever, to get back to where it was at the top of the education ladder. Of equal concern is the parents who can afford to send their children abroad, once trained, are not going to allow them to return to Sri Lanka. The result will be will affect not only Jaffna, but the rest of the country, including the south. I think I've come to the end of my 25 minutes, 5 minutes to go. I'll go on probably for another minute and a half, and then I'll have to stop, although there's a lot more which I have got to say. Poverty and unemployment in the north. Poverty and unemployment are higher in the northern province than anywhere else in Sri Lanka. At the Northern Province Council in the second budget reading in 12/12/17, the Chief Minister said that out of all 25 districts in Sri Lanka, the Kilinochchi was the poorest. Mullaitivu, which was previously the poorest, is now number 2 on the list of poverty districts. Jaffna is the 5th poorest district. I think that's about it. I've got 3 minutes to go. I think I'll stop at that level and allow Rana Bopage to speak.
Thank you, Dr. Brian. Thank you for explaining about the views within the Tamil concepts. You have put forward a case for international intervention for any changes in Sri Lanka. We think there may be other alternatives that we need to consider, because the international reforms does not even make a dent in the policy of Sri Lankan government all this time. And we are still seeking, if we can join forces with the Sinhala people, with the progressives, trade unions and students and just common people. And we were disappointed when there was no response from the South when we had this long march for 5 days. And so we think we need to repair that, and we need to build up forces from the South. And we think there is a possibility that that Tamil activism can bring solidarity with the Sinhala people, and more, it is the duty of the Sinhala people also to join the activism, not only on the national ethnic question, but much more than that. And here we have a champion who have done that. Lionel Bobeke, now he is 68 years of age, who has been to jail, the Revolutionary College, twice. And during his time, he had been tortured, and he had played a leading role as a political commissar in the JVP movement in 1970s and 80s. He rose to position as a general secretary of JVP, but resigned from the group in 1984 over a number of differences. Importantly, his principled support for the right of national self-determination for the Tamil people. He was eventually forced into political exile with his daughter and his wife Chitra. Now he lives in Melbourne, Australia, where he continues to be outspoken defender of human rights and social justice. May I invite Dr. Dr. Lionel Bobeke, and you have 30 minutes. The floor is yours. Thank you, Doctor.
Thank you, Charles, for that introduction. But I need to do a correction. I am 77 years old.
I beg your pardon. I beg your pardon.
Yeah, okay. Thank you. Thanks, Charles, for that introduction. Good evening, good afternoon, and good morning, depending on from where you join this discussion, dear friends. First, I would like to thank Dr. Suresh Surendran and Prime May Plus for inviting me to this online seminar. Let me begin by acknowledging the traditional owners, the first people of the land of Australia, from where I am making this presentation today. That is Australian tradition. I pay my respect to their elders, past and present. Sri Lanka's strategic location in the South Asian region makes the country's political, economic, and military dimensions much more complex. Hence, the human rights situation in Sri Lanka cannot solely be simplified to a localized issue. We need to keep this factor in mind during our discussions. As such, understanding the current challenges to human rights in the country needs a discussion of wider scope. Human rights denote a number of basic rights that are essential for an individual to live a life as a human being, and for a community to survive without them being oppressed and their rights being drastically curtailed. Their wide remit includes the right to life, right to a fair trial, freedom from torture and other cruel and inhuman treatment, freedom of speech, freedom of religion, and the rights to health, education, and an adequate standard of living. Many countries the world over are grappling with socio-economic, political, religious, cultural, and technological issues. In the process, human rights are breached almost everywhere, from the world's happiest nation, Finland, to the least happy in Afghanistan. During the last 7 decades, many human rights authorities have been in the scene in the form of commissions, committees, observation teams, and international criminal courts. Yet, human rights violations are still rising sharply. There is a clear and urgent need to understand why human rights violations are on the rise, and to tackle these violations by addressing the underlying issues. Despite many shortcomings and structural limitations associated with the United Nations Human Rights Council, It is the only internationally recognized authority that plays a pioneering role in defending human rights. In the post-colonial world, unlike the feudal era, we are increasingly interconnected and internationalized. Our common denominator for linking with each other has become dependent on a shared set of rights and responsibilities about equality and fairness. So let us retrospectively be honest. As Sinhalese, did we consider caring for the rights of Tamils, Muslims, and other minorities? Did Tamils care for the rights of the Sinhalese and Muslims? Did Muslims care for the rights of Sinhalese and Tamils? Did Sinhalese, Tamils, or Muslims care for their diversity, such as castes, clans, faiths, sects, etc.? Were we concerned when successive governments from 1948 onwards commenced discriminating against Tamils in Sri Lanka? How many of us are concerned when Sri Lanka banned the right of Sri Lankan Muslims to bury their COVID-affected dead? Were we concerned when the government barred the Tamils in the north and east the right to mourn their dead? What did we do when security forces abducted, kidnapped, killed, or made to disappear young people, students, activists, journalists, lawyers, and anyone critical of the government actions, starting from the south in the 70s, extending it to the north and east in the 80s, and then to the whole of Ireland until 2009? Were we concerned when tens of thousands of Sinhalese youth were massacred in the 80s? Were we concerned when bombs were exploded targeting civilians in the south and the north? How many of us were sad when the people of other communities were harassed, subjected to torture and rape, held in detention with no legal recourse, made to disappear, slashed to death, slaughtered, or even when desecrated body parts of the slain were displayed in public? The disappearances and kidnappings that took place previously point to the fact that many mass graves need to be located throughout the island. Investigations into mass graves appear to cover up the horrendous criminal activities carried out under direct political guidance of the rulers. Just as worrying is when human rights violators, including assassins, are being held in high esteem. Many alleged perpetrators of kidnappings, killings, and disappearances have been released even after their convictions, following propaganda campaigns portraying them as war heroes, patriots, and even anti-terror specialists. Human rights are about the right of people to live a life free from fear, harassment, or discrimination. They are the same for everyone living anywhere in the world. Men, women, young, the old, rich, poor, regardless of the background, where they live, what they think, or what they believe. That is why they are called universal human rights. However, what we experience are universal violations of human rights. We hear the never-ending fallacious mantra that human rights are a recent invention of the West. It is not. Ideas about rights and responsibilities of human beings are nothing new or Western. Rights have been an important part of all societies throughout human history. Even at the time of the Buddha, there had been serious human rights violations caused by the color bar that was deep-rooted in the Indian society. A handful belonging to upper caste led a privileged life, while the majority comprising the downtrodden led a miserable life under an unjust social order. Women were treated as chattel of their spouses. The Kalama Sutra shows that the Buddha was the first leader who advocated freedom of thought, freedom of inquiry, and freedom of expression. We recognize the fundamental worth of every individual by acknowledging and respecting their human rights. That is why at the beginning, I acknowledged the dispossession and human rights violations committed by the British and their progeny on the traditional owners of the beautiful land of Australia. Violations that are still being enacted daily. The Universal Declaration of Human Rights sends a strong message of a universal agreement that provides a common standard achievement for all people and all nations. Historical experience shows us that human rights and freedoms, whether of an individual or of a community, are inalienably linked to economic interests and privileges. The position of an affluent person who chooses to fast is entirely different to that of an individual who is forced to starve. Their rights and freedoms need to be understood in their totally different socioeconomic contexts. The Universal Declaration proclaimed both political and economic rights, though subsequently, 2 draft protocols separated civil and political rights from economic, social, and cultural rights. Civil and political rights denote the right to take part in civil and political life without discrimination or oppression. Economic, social, and cultural rights denote the right of an individual to prosper and grow. They are about the rights of people to have a guaranteed minimum standard of living, well-being, and an equal opportunity to develop their full potential. Sri Lanka and other governments in Asia boast about Asian values, which give primacy to economic development over political freedoms. This is to justify their authoritarian rule. They view individual rights as luxuries that developing countries cannot afford and make no excuses in repeatedly violating them. The West is also just as hypocritical and self-serving, also in their violation of human rights in the name of democracy. Iraq being a recent prime example. We cannot imagine development without rights and freedoms. Similarly, we cannot imagine people enjoying civil and political rights while their basic needs are not met. Rights are interconnected, interdependent, interrelated, and indivisible, and underline the firm link between political freedoms and the fulfillment of economic needs. 2 classes of rights complement each other because the objective of the declaration was to ensure that no person on the basis of that person's place of birth, parentage, caste, creed, color, language, religion, etc. shall be denied the inalienable privileges that person is entitled to as a human being. It also asserts that if such an unjust and inhuman act is committed somewhere, urgent action should be taken against such acts, ranging from enactment of economic sanctions to utilization of force by the United Nations. Recent events in Burma, Russia, Belarus, Hong Kong, India, and many others, and their local opposition to their dictatorial practices indicate that human rights do matter. The daily broadcasts during the last few weeks have been of repressions, extremely humiliating, intensely degrading, and brutally violent. Irrespective of our language, race, culture, or religion, those broadcasts should have shocked us all. Peoples and communities are being stripped of their human dignity. Aren't they abhorrent? This soberly reminds us that the world the Universal Declaration envisioned is still far away from us. In Sri Lanka, unfortunately, the legal system and its laws can be bent to suit the occasion, and cases can be framed to keep someone imprisoned or physically restrained. The vague and broad terms are usually defined by the arresting officer and the political needs. Victims in Sri Lanka have waited long enough for truth, justice, and reparations. No meaningful progress will be made on accountability if the Sri Lankan government is left to its own devices. Indeed, the lack of accountability sows the seeds of future conflict. The Human Rights Council should pass a strong resolution that this moment requires. Since 1948, one could easily identify systemic ongoing human rights violations against private individuals. For example, in case of handling day-to-day law and order issues, police regularly violates rights of suspects they take into custody. Most of them are subjected to degrading treatment and torture. Some are framed up with charges concocted against them. In addition, almost every decade, there have been periodic human rights violations inflicted upon communities. In this sense, violence and torture have been a major issue of politics in the modern history of Sri Lanka. Such violations can be observed during workers' strikes, people's protests, managed pogroms, and mass-scale repressions against upcoming political entities, etc. If upcoming political entities threaten or likely to threaten the interests and privileges of ruling elites, then history shows us that regimes have resorted to using terror against such entities to the extent of annihilating them. Let us now look at other aspects in dealing with human rights. Many Vedda people, the first inhabitants of Sri Lanka, many rural communities, and urban working people suffer due to lack of mainstream education and unemployment, poor health and housing, and lack of services and facilities. Women suffer due to domestic violence and do not enjoy many fundamental human rights. During the last 2 years, destruction of environment, including setting fire to forests, deforestation, land clearance, sand and mineral extraction, have endangered wildlife and ecosystems, and the island has been prone to natural disasters such as flooding, landslides, etc. These have been more intense with its attendant deleterious consequences on the people's right to maintain their physical and mental well-being, violating their basic right to live in a sustainable environment with adequate access to clean air, water, food, and shelter. Vast and powerful networks of bribery and corruption violate human rights of the people by undermining the rule of law, impeding development, and promoting misgovernance. Successive regimes have come to power promising eradication of bribery and corruption. Yet, once in power, they have intentionally disregarded or purposefully sabotaged all effective systems and procedures available to fight corruption. Corruption has infected and crippled state apparatus and law enforcement mechanisms from top to bottom. Education is a basic human right. Every child should be entitled to receive a good education. Governments have a responsibility and a duty for providing facilities and services to all students on an equitable basis for them to receive a good quality education. However, governments have evaded this responsibility. Education has become a desperately problematic issue for ordinary people to deal with, from admission to a school, prepping children for examinations, finding suitably qualified and capable teachers, and providing a suitable higher education that could realize their full potential while catering to developing skills for employment. There are many other aspects, such as healthcare, that we are not dealing with because of time restraints. Since the 1940s and officially since 1971, governments have progressively reinforced a culture of impunity within the state security forces and paramilitaries. Consecutive executive presidents have retained security personnel who are alleged to be responsible for many criminal acts and crimes against humanity. Later on, they have been promoted and redeployed in subsequent or would-be military campaigns and utilized in the next cycle of repression against upcoming political and social forces. Due to the alleged war crimes and crimes against humanity during the end of the armed conflict with the Liberation Tigers, which are yet to be adequately and properly addressed, the United Nations Human Rights Council is in the process of adopting a new resolution on Sri Lanka on the necessity to maintain international oversight. According to the report the United Nations released in 2015, many of the violations are committed by all parties to the conflict during the last stages of the long civil war. They are tantamount to war crimes and crimes against humanity. The report made several recommendations on how Sri Lanka could address these violations and achieve lasting peace. In 2015, the government co-sponsored the United Nations Human Rights Council Resolution 30/1, pledged to investigate and prosecute war-related crimes and to adopt wide-ranging legal reforms and transitional justice measures. However, political commitment necessary to pursue even the small number of cases filed pertaining to corruption, abduction, murder was lacking at the leadership level. Last year, the Rajapaksa government announced its withdrawal from its commitment made under the Human Rights Resolution, which included creating domestic accountability measures with some international involvement. The government's creation of a weak commission to review the work of the previous commission of inquiry needs to be seen as a brazen and cynical attempt to stave off efforts by the core group of states to pass a new resolution. Whether the current efforts of the United Nations Human Rights Council for pursuing accountability would be able to reverse the growing authoritarian, chauvinist, and militaristic trends is questionable. The authoritarian process of militarization of civil administration and consolidating Sinhala Buddhist supremacy over minorities is clearly evident. This has resulted in increased state surveillance and harassment of civil society activists. The 20th Amendment to the Constitution has provided the executive with almost total control of the judiciary, police, and independent commissions and other oversight agencies, thus further eroding separation of powers and weakening checks and balances mechanisms. Presidential pardons for those sentenced for notorious criminal activities such as murders and gruesome crimes will enable security forces to act with further brazen impunity. This poses an ongoing threat to the pluralist nature of Sri Lanka's society, equality of treatment, and social and political stability. Hopefully, the new United Nations Human Rights Council resolution would address the issue of preventing the country sliding back towards another chapter of violence. Human rights are associated with and accompanied by the responsibilities and duties towards the other, both as individuals and communities. Individuals have a responsibility to ensure that when they exercise their rights, they do so with consideration for the rights of others. We all have a responsibility to hold up to scrutiny and accountability any circumstances where human rights of others are compromised. That is why promoting a strong culture of human rights is so vital, and we need more and dedicated defenders of human rights due to these circumstances. How can we then reverse this worrying historical trend and build strong institutional structures and processes that will ensure proper checks and balances? Maybe we can start by propagating human rights concepts and ideas in society via competitions, performances, exhibitions, debates. We need to establish a culture in which defending and contributing to human rights are celebrated. We can make use of opportunities available to celebrate local heroes who defend human rights and the difference their hard work has made to the community, carried out under difficult circumstances and sometimes at great personal and professional risk and cost. Their contributions have enriched our society, the results of which the society will continue to enjoy. The value of humanity diminishes when one's living environment is conditioned by violation of human rights, resulting in violent conflicts and their calamitous effects, bloodshed, death, and destruction. We need broader perspectives to understand the complexity of the current rights violation situation and develop sustainable and long-lasting solutions. While recognize the need to address specific problems facing each community, we need to be able to address the injustices and grievances faced by other communities as well. Therefore, we need to recognize the common suffering of all people as we share a common humanity, history, and country. Propagandists for patriotism and nationalism become major players in violating human rights and perpetuating conflicts. They often exploit emotions for their hunger for power. In the process, some of them have become blind fanatics, adamantly believing that their views are inviolable. In this situation, one could simply choose to retreat into cynicism and despair and become onlookers of these horrible events, because responding to such situations needs a lot of commitment, temperament, and determination, and can be exhausting. However, if we wish to reverse this trend, every one of us who are concerned with the deteriorating situation in Sri Lanka needs to raise our voice in principled opposition and agitate against these violators. We need to break down the compartments, the silos, the barriers among us, among our communities. We need to open the doors of communication among ourselves once again. We need to build a vibrant opposition against the rising authoritarian trends, increasing militarization, and daily deterioration of our governance systems. 4. A lack of opposition makes human rights violations with impunity a reality. We have surely had enough of kidnappings, murders, disappearances. It should not become the norm again. We should not let this happen. There are rays of hope on the bleak human rights situation in Sri Lanka. Some religious and community leaders have risen to the occasion. We really appreciate their commitment. It is our earnest hope that the other religious leaders and community leaders, dignitaries, will rise to the occasion and spread the message of humanity, compassion, reconciliation, and unity, rather than that of hate and division. We, the overseas Sri Lankans, need to strengthen the shoots of hope by demanding better systems, better governance procedures, robust protection of human rights, and better services. Instead of helping the ruling elite to develop yet another conflict to protect their privileges and interests and utilize crisis to make a quick buck, we need to make a positive contribution to safeguard the rights and freedoms of all communities and people of Sri Lanka. We need to resist promoting animosity, hatred, and antagonism, create more and better opportunities to engage in dialogue within and across our communities of people. We need to break down the barriers. We can do it, and let us do it. No regime can or should use the need for economic advancement to justify the repression of civil and political rights of their own people. No country can legitimately prioritize economic conditions over political freedoms or political freedoms over economic conditions. Civil, political freedoms, and economic and social development are indivisible. Human rights are not bound by any single tradition, culture, or belief. The Universal Declaration stipulates that every government has a duty to ensure all people under their geographic remit enjoy their inalienable rights and freedoms in equality and with dignity. Furthermore, it establishes that these rights are universal. Wherever we live, whatever our circumstances or our place in society, our gender or sexual orientation, our race or religion or belief, we are all entitled to these rights. Human rights defenders still face persecution. Reprisals are rising, and the space for civil society action is shrinking in very many nations. The Sustainable Development Agenda that aims to lift millions out of poverty and enable them to access their economic and social rights cannot be realized without respecting human rights. Lasting peace and security can never be achieved in any country without an abiding respect and commitment to human rights. Authoritarian and oppressive dictatorships need to be replaced by participatory systems of governance. We have to speak out and take a stand for human rights. All of us, young and old, have a role to play at work, in the street, in our daily lives. For realizing sustainable development goals, we need to move the young people away from their attitudes of apathy. They can make a significant contribution by becoming the agents of change and partners in building peaceful, just, and inclusive societies. Change is possible. One of the most important aspects of bringing about change lies in educating people about human rights and the community's responsibility in ensuring that those rights are respected and protected. As the Secretary General of the United Nations once stated, our motto needs to be, I will respect your rights regardless of who you are. I will uphold your rights even when I disagree with you. When anyone's human rights are denied, everyone's rights are undermined. So I will stand up. I will raise my voice. I will take action. I will use my rights to stand up for your rights. Therein lies the path to peace, reconciliation, dignity, and opportunity for all. Thank you for being part of this discussion. I hope you enjoyed this presentation. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Bopege. It is heavily loaded. You have not left any stones unturned. We want to empower the people, whether they are Tamils or Sinhalese. It's about every right that you have put across. Thank you so much. And your point that we cannot separate one right from the other is, I think it's a very, very important point that we need to strengthen our foundation on what we build at the moment, and the thoughts about the participatory government. Thank you so much. And we are going to go into a panel discussion. And
sorry to interrupt, Charles. Is it possible anyone to do a translation, a bit of a summary in?
Yes, I have asked Mazouk, and he's going to do that before the panel. And it is going to be a small attempt by Mazouk. And if there is anyone else also would like to mention anything else, please do. And can I invite Mazouk?
Charles, sorry, I have to disappoint. You know why? I am having sort of continuous internet sort of disruption. So I've been unable to follow what it is. Here and there, I'm following something to do with my internet connection. So it'll be difficult. I have not been able to take out any notes on those presentations.
Fine.
So it will be, yeah.
Okay.
Sorry about it. Yeah.
All right. And I don't know whether any participants is looking for any such translation. If you put your hands up or anything like that, we can try and do it as much as possible. Otherwise, we will go into the panel discussion. Okay, there isn't any, but if we also have recorded this one, possibly we'll try and see if we can get the translation to people who might require it at a later date. So, Suren, if you want to introduce your panel that you have here.
Yes. In addition to the speaker, I would like to invite Ramalingam Chandrasekhar from Jaffna, Sri Lanka. And also, I would like to invite Mr. Tibagaran and also Mazouk. So those are the panel with the speakers. Charles, you continuously lead that one. I will be also in the panel.
Fine.
And please, coordinate this.
Okay, thank you so much. And but first of all, is there any questions from audience before we take up, before we go into the panel? Any questions?
Can I just make one comment? This is Mukundan.
Yes, Mukundan,
yeah.
please go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, I have been part of this Voice for Democracy, and I have heard Lionel and his discussions, but I thought his presentation today was just simply superb. I didn't know he had this much depth and this much capability. I'm sure he must have, but this is the first time I heard.
Okay.
I mean, I was extremely impressed. So thank you very much.
Thank you for your comments, Mukundan. Anybody else? Okay, in that case, we'll go into the panel discussion. If there's anything else, also people can join. There is no restrictions as such. It is a group that we are trying to set up a think tank group, what we can do and what we can offer to the people, and we need to go into much deeper analysis into what is beyond the horizon, and we are looking for other alternatives and what are the options available internationally, what is available internally, and also we are trying to see how we can bring about the changes within and internationally as well. So can I call upon Mr. Chandrasekhar Ramalingam if he want to add anything?
I think he is struggling with his internet, I think.
Right. We'll start with you, Soren, and we'll go to the other people.
Yeah. I think he's struggling. I think for panel, can I ask a first questions or for the panel discussion, Charles?
Yes, please do.
Charles, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you well. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay.
Shall we take a topic here, particularly to get advice or opinion from the panel, then we can discuss. So currently in Sri Lanka, a lot of problems we are not looking as a Sri Lankans. If anything, issues in North, it can be a human right one. South, people not much have some interest, vice versa. If any problem happening in South, there's no interest in North. What is the panel's view on that, and how we can improve as a Sri Lankan, how we can unite and face this kind of a human, this kind of a issue collectively as a Sri Lankans?
Lionel?
Okay, yeah, I will open up the
Yeah,
discussion.
thank you.
Probably. Now, about the separate nature of struggles in Sri Lanka. So, for example, say in the 50s, when Sinhala was made the official language of the country, the Tamil political leadership, they protested peacefully. And at the time, the political leadership in the South, although they sympathized, some of the left people, they didn't come out in the open in support of those issues. Well, the LSSP and the Communist Party, they spoke in the parliament and they said, you know, if you recognize Sinhala as the official language, then there will be two countries. And if you recognize two languages, still, you know, they didn't say that probably, you know, so they had a correct position with regard to these issues. But then, now I was a member of the student wing of the Communist Party when I was in year 9, right? And I didn't know anything about what was going on with regard to the language issue, for example, what the real issues affecting the people in the North and East or the Tamil speaking people. But I had other experiences. Say, for example, in 1958, when riots against Tamil people were initiated by the government in the South, I had personal experience about a Tamil person from Chunnakam who was doing business in our area. He was affected, his family was affected. So he came in search of protection and we protected him and sent back to Chunnakam, right? And it was a horrendous experience because our house was surrounded by the hooligans to attack us because we were protecting Tamils, right? So that was my very first experience. But then it was not a political experience as such. It was a personal, individualistic experience. And when in 1971, when there was an insurrection in the South, I don't think most of the people in the North and East understood what it was all about. Right? So there was this huge gap. And probably because there were two causes for the two rebellions. In the case of the Southern Rebellion, the underlying issue was more social and economic unemployment, lack of, the problems with educational facilities and so on. There are so many issues, right? Lack of land, lack of water, lack of all other issues. Whereas in the North and East, it was mainly on their rights as a nation, as a community, as a nationality, to use their language, to use their other rights, right? Southern people didn't understand that, and the Northern people understand what was happening in the South. So unless there is this common sort of an understanding as to the issues, right? Now, still, I think, what has happened is because politicians are using chauvinistic and, other emotions among people in the South, whenever there is a crisis situation, people, come and fight and, harm other people and so on. That is what happened in 1958, 1962, and the 1970s and 1983. Of course, there is an element of government involvement in arousing these things. And in the North and East, the issues that are, national, sort of say, for example, the issue of language, issue of standardization, issue of colonization, issue of all issues, they are projected as separatist or chauvinist, sort of demands of the Tamil people, which is very sad. Sort of the people in the South don't understand that situation. And so we will have to see how we could overcome this. As I said, there is a barrier. We are in silos, we are in compartments, and this has been generated since 1950s. We have Buddhist schools, we have Hindu schools, we have Muslim schools, we have Christian schools, we have Sinhala schools, we have, sort of look at the way the younger generation have been compartmentalized. So how are we going to break down this? That is the problem. That is the major issue in front of us that we need to tackle. Sorry, I have been dragging on too much.
Thank you, Dr. Bobege. It is. I think this is the very first thing that we may have to do to overcome. But is there any other view? Comrade Chandrasekhar has joined us now. Do you have any other views, Dr. Chandrasekhar? Sorry, Mr. Chandrasekhar? Hello?
Probably he can't hear us.
Yes. Okay.
Bad signal. So we will ask Dr. Brano or someone, I think. Yeah.
Dr. Brian, can you hear us? Do you have any comments that you can contribute? I think he's unable to hear us. And okay, feel free for anybody else if they want to contribute anything else on this matter. I think.
வணக்கம். சார்ஸ் அண்ணா, நான் இந்த டாக்குமெண்ட் சொல்லலாம்னு இருக்கிறேன். தமிழில் தான் நான் சொல்ல வேணும், தான் ஃப்ளூவெண்டாக வரும். அனைவருக்கும் வணக்கம். அதாவது மனித உரிமைகள் சார்ந்து நாங்கள் தான் பேசிக்கொண்டிருக்கிறோம். இந்த மனித உரிமைகள் சார்ந்த விடயம் என்பது இலங்கையில அனைவருக்கும் கற்பிக்கப்பட வேண்டிய விஷயமா இருக்கு. அதாவது இலங்கை சமூகம் என்பது, அதாவது 3 சமூகங்களுக்கும் மனித உரிமைகள் பற்றி நாங்கள் முதலாவது கற்பிக்க வேண்டிய சூழல் உருவாகி இருக்கிறது. ஏனென்றால் மனித உரிமைகளை மதிப்பதற்கும் மனித உரிமைகள் பற்றிய கருத்துருவாக்கமும் எங்கள் மத்தியில இல்லை. அதாவது தமிழர்கள் மத்தியிலையும் இல்லை, சிங்களவர்கள் மத்தியிலையும் இல்லை, அதே நேரத்துல முஸ்லிம்கள் மத்தியிலையும் இல்லை. அவர்களுக்கு தெரிந்தது எல்லாம் தங்களுடைய விருப்புவாதத்தை நிலைநாட்டுவதாகத்தான் இருக்கிறது. ஆகவே நாங்கள் இந்த மனித உரிமைகள் பற்றி முதலாவது 3 சமூகங்களுக்கும் எடுத்துரைக்க வேண்டியதும், அதே நேரத்துல இந்த மனித உரிமைகள் பற்றி தெரிந்தால்தான் நாங்கள் டெமோக்ரஸி பற்றி பேசலாம். இந்த டெமோக்ரஸி என்பது எங்கள் மீது திணிக்கப்பட்ட ஒன்று என்றபடியினால, அதாவது இந்த ஜனநாயகம் கடந்த 80 ஆண்டுகளாகத்தான் இந்த இலங்கை சமூகத்துக்கு ஜனநாயகம் என்றால் என்னென்று தெரியும். அதனால இவர்களுக்கு இந்த ஜனநாயகம் சரியாக புகட்டப்படவில்லை. ஆங்கிலேயர்களால் புகட்டப்பட்ட இந்த ஜனநாயகம் என்பது தலையெண்ணம் ஜனநாயகமாகவும் அதே நேரத்துல இன்னொரு தர அதாவது பெரும்பான்மையினரை அடக்குவதாகவும் தான் இவர்கள் கற்பிதம் கொண்டிருக்கிறார்கள். அதே நேரத்துல இந்த சமூக அமைப்புகளுக்கூடாக சாதிய முறைகளுக்கூடாக இந்த ஜனநாயகத்தை பயன்படுத்தி அடக்குகிற முறைமைதான் அங்கே வளர்ந்திருக்கிறது. ஆகவே இந்த தொடர் வளர்ச்சி சிங்கள சமூகத்தில் உள்ள அதாவது வர்க்க வேறுபாடுகளுக்குள்ளால் வர்க்கங்களை அடக்குவதாக இருந்தது. நாங்கள் இந்த ஜனநாயகத்தின்படி பார்த்தால் பண்டாரநாயக்கா இறந்த போது டிபிசி சில்வா வந்திருக்க வேணும். ஆனா தகநாயக்காவை பிரதமராக்கினார்கள். அவர் ஒரு கரவா சமூகம் என்பதனால அவரை விட்டு விட்டார்கள். ஆனால் ஒரே ஒரு கட்சியினுடைய ஒரே ஒரு உறுப்பினராக வந்த தகநாயக்கா அன்றைய பிரதமராக வந்தார். இப்படித்தான் இந்த ஜனநாயகம் என்பது சாதி முறைகளுக்குள்ளால் அடக்குகின்ற ஒரு முறைமையாக வளர்ந்து போய் இருக்கிறது. அது இன்று ஜனநாயகம் என்பது சாதி முறைகளுக்காலே அடக்குது, இன ரீதியாகவும் மத ரீதியாகவும் அடக்குமுறைகளை கொண்டு வருவதாக இருக்கிறது. அதனால நாங்கள் முதல் மனித உரிமைகள் பற்றி இந்த மக்களுக்கும் அரசியல்வாதிகளுக்கும் புரிய வைக்க வேண்டும். அதுதான் எங்களோட பெரிய பிரச்சனையாக இருக்கிறது. இந்த நிலைமையில இருந்து கொண்டுதான் நாங்கள் உலகளாவிய ஜனநாயகம் பற்றி பேசிக் கொண்டிருக்கிறோம். அப்ப இலங்கை இன்று அதாவது இலங்கை தீவு இன்று ஒரு அதாவது ஹிட்லர் முசோலினி மேற்கொண்ட நாசிசத்தையும் ஹிட்லர் வைத்திருந்த பாசிசத்தையும் அதே நேரத்தில் ஜப்பானியர்கள் வைத்திருந்த இராணுவவாதத்தையும் இணைத்த ஒரு கோட்பாடாகத்தான் இன்றைக்கு ஒரு நாடு ஒரு தேசம் ஒரு மக்கள் என்ற சிந்தனையை கோத்தபாய அரசாங்கம் அறிவிக்கிறது. அப்ப இதுல இருந்து
நீங்கள் இந்த டிரான்ஸ்லேட் பண்றதுக்கு மாசுக்க உங்களை நீங்க சொல்றத ஆங்கிலத்துல சொல்ல போறேன். சொன்னது பிறகு Bazu, go ahead.
Well, really, he refers to the lack of understanding of the various sections of the people, what democracy and what human rights and those situations. They only think of their own situations arising from language or religious minorities. The Sinhalese have their own interests. Therefore, unless that there is an understanding created between both these groups, there will be exploitation by the rulers, corrupt rulers, or he referred to the type of rule, governors or rule that could be like the Hitlers or other dictators. And he also defined how Hitler used his fascist thinking, Japan used his military ability to sort of control world affairs. So these are the things that people should understand, and there must be some mechanism or process to make the people understand of these violations of freedom, democracy, freedom, and human rights. That's in short that I understood, picked up from his.
Yeah. அடுத்தது
question is how to overcome this situation. That's all.
அடுத்து இந்த இலங்கையில் இன்று இந்த மனித உரிமைகள் பற்றி நாங்கள் பேசுவது, இந்த மனித உரிமைகளை மீறுவது என்பது அவர்களுக்கு அது ஒரு சாதாரண இயல்பான விடயமாக மாறிவிட்டது. அது நேச்சர், அது அப்படித்தான். அதை பற்றி பெரிய கவலை இல்லை. ஏனென்றால் மனித
உரிமைகள் நான் கொஞ்சம் இன்டரப்ட் பண்ணி நான் இதை சொல்லிடுறேன். Because I cannot sort of grasp everything. Other thing that he's mentioning is that this violation of human rights in Sri Lanka has been a common thing. It's a day-to-day affair. Yeah, சொல்லுங்க.
அப்ப இந்த மனித உரிமைகள் பற்றி இவர்களுக்கு புரியவில்லை. அதுதான் முதலாவது விஷயம். மனித உரிமைகள் என்றால் அவர்களுக்கு வெப்பம் கைக்கிறது, அது அவர்களுக்கு விருப்பம் இல்லை. மனித உரிமைகள் பற்றி பேச இலங்கையுடைய அரசியல்வாதிகளுக்கும் அல்லது ஆளும் வர்க்கத்துக்கும் அது விருப்பம் இல்லை. அது கதைக்கிறார். அவர்கள் செய்கின்ற மனித உரிமைகள் மீறல்கள் தான் அவர்கள் ஜனநாயகம் என்று கருதி கொண்டிருக்கிறார்கள், சொல்லிக் கொண்டிருக்கிறார்கள்.
So it may be, let it be the people in government or even other politicians. They just sort of, they don't take this violation of democracy as a serious matter. It's a normal happening. That is what is there in everybody in Sri Lanka. Yeah.
இந்த நிலைமை ஏன் வந்தது என்றால் நாங்கள் பார்க்கலாம் 71 ஜேவிபி கிளர்ச்சியின் போதும் அதே போல 89 ஜேவிபி கிளர்ச்சியின் போதும் வடக்கில் ஏற்பட்ட இந்த அதாவது தனிநாட்டுக்கான தமிழர்களுடைய ஆயுத போராட்டத்திலும் மேற்கொள்ளப்பட்ட அந்த மனித உரிமை மீறல்களை பார்க்கின்ற போது இது ஒரு இயல்பானது. அதாவது கற்கால சமூகம், மனித சமூகம் எப்படி இருந்ததோ அந்த நிலைமையில தான் அது சிந்திக்கிறது. அது இந்த மனநிலை மகாவம்சத்திலே இருந்தும் வந்திருக்கலாம். அந்த மகாவம்சத்திலே இருந்து வந்த அந்த மனநிலையை வைத்துக்கொண்டு தமிழர்கள் மீது அல்லது தாழ்த்தப்பட்டவர்கள் மீது அல்லது ஒடுக்கப்பட்டவர்கள் மீது மேற்கொள்ளப்பட்ட மனித உரிமைகள் மீறல்கள் எதிர்வினையாற்ற தொடங்கி இருக்கின்றன. அவர்களும் இவர்களுக்கு பதிலடியாக
Now this mentality prevailed even during the uprising 1971 uprising of JVP, and also subsequently in 1980, in the 1980s, 86, 87. Now people totally, whatever the oppressive measures taken by the rulers or government against these have been just become normal, and people were not taking seriously. Don't know whether this thinking of violation or suppression comes from even from Mahavansa or any other concept of thinking. So that is the problem. Yeah.
இனி நாங்கள் ஒரு இலங்கையில ஒரு மனித உரிமைகள் பற்றி பேசுவதற்கும் மனித உரிமைகளை வென்றெடுப்பதற்கும் நாங்கள் அதாவது பிரைமரியில இருந்து சிறுவர்களுக்கு அதை படிப்பிக்க வேணும். அதாவது அறநெறி கல்வி என்பதன் ஊடாக ஒரு ஜனநாயகத்தையும் இந்த மனித உரிமைகளையும் பற்றி நாங்கள் நிறைய படிப்பிக்க வேண்டியிருக்கிறது.
So if you have to bring about a change, create an understanding what is democracy, what is human rights, we have got to start from the scratch or from the, say, bottom, to start educating the people on the values of democracy and violation of rights. Yeah.
இப்படி நாங்கள் இந்த ஆரம்பத்திலிருந்து கற்பித்தால்தான் இன்னும் ஒரு 20 வருடங்களுக்குள்ளாவது இலங்கையை ஒரு மனித உரிமைகளை மதிக்கின்ற ஒரு ஜனநாயக பங்குள்ள மக்களாகவும் அந்த நாட்டை கட்டியெழுப்ப முடியும். இல்லாவிட்டால் இது தொடர்ந்து அழிவை நோக்கித்தான் போகும்.
It is then that we can, at least in 20 years time to come, that we will be able to sort of achieve this objective of democracy and human rights. Otherwise, the same situation as it is prevalent now will continue.
அப்ப நாங்கள் இந்த மனித உரிமைகள் பற்றி பேசுவதோடு மாத்திரமல்ல, அதை எதிர்கால சந்ததிக்கு கற்பிப்பதற்கும் அதை ஒரு நடைமுறைகளுக்கு ஊடாக அல்லது சர்வதேச நிறுவனங்களுக்கு ஊடாக நாங்கள் இந்த கற்பித்தல் முறையை ஆரம்பிக்க வேணும். அதாவது இலங்கையினுடைய அரசாங்கத்தினுடைய கல்வி திட்டத்துல இது ஒருபோதும் வராது. இது அப்படி வந்தால் இந்த ஆளும் வர்க்கம் இல்லாமல் போய்விடும். அப்ப ஆளும் வர்க்கம் தன்னை தொடர்ந்து நிலைநாட்டுவதற்கு இந்த கல்வி முறையைத்தான் வைத்திருக்கோம். அப்ப நாங்கள் கல்வி முறையை வேற இன்னொன்றுக்குள்ளால கொண்டு போகணும் சர்வதேச நிறுவனங்களுக்கு.
Educating the younger generation. There is no system or any method even in the education system of Sri Lanka. But what you have got to do is that with the involvement of international agencies and so on, we have got to devise some method and a plan of action to sort of educate the younger generation of these values that we are talking of. Yeah.
அப்ப நாங்கள் இந்த நடைமுறைகளை கொண்டு வருவதற்கான மனித உரிமைகள் சார்ந்த வேலை திட்டத்தை தொடர்ந்து செய்வோம். அதாவது எங்களுடைய இந்த பிரேம் ஊடாக நாங்கள் இதை செய்யலாம் என்று இருக்கிறோம். இதை செய்து முடிப்போம்.
So let us start with these discussions and so on to sort of plan out some ideas and a plan of action to achieve these good objectives.
இன்றைய இந்த கலந்தாய்வுல 2 சமூகங்களையும் சேர்ந்தவர்கள் ஒன்றாக இணைந்து பயணிப்பது என்பதும் மனித உரிமைகள் சார்ந்து பேசுவது என்பதும் எங்களுக்கு ஒரு நல்ல விடயமாக இருக்கிறது. நல்லொரு அதாவது ஒரு வெளிச்சத்தை எங்களுக்கு தருகிறது, நம்பிக்கையை தருகிறது. நாங்கள் தொடர்ந்து பயணிப்போம், எல்லா சமூகங்களும் இணைந்து மனித உரிமைகள் சார்ந்த செயற்பாடுகளை தொடர்ந்து பயணிப்போம். நன்றி.
So it is pleasing to see people from various communities participate in the discussions on a common issue of this nature which affects all, and hope we'll be able to work together and put our thoughts into action towards a better society.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you. Thank you to hear from an activist on the ground who is willing to mold into these ideas that the speakers have brought in today. And it is important that we take it from this level to the next level. So the people who have come here, I think most of them that I see has some credibility behind them, and they had been a party to many of the changes. And I will call upon Lionel Bobege again to continue how we can bring about this change.
Charles, can I interrupt and before Mr. Bobege continues this? Now, this issue of sovereignty and interference of foreign organizations or governments and so on, for instance, even the Human Rights Commission. Now, this has gone into the minds of the Sinhalese people. Even some sections of the progressive elements, they still talk of this interference in the sovereignty of Sri Lanka when international organizations like the United Nations or any other Amnesty International or human rights. What do you think on that? Is there any sort of reasonable, acceptable argument in that?
Okay, let Dr. Bobege start with that, and we will continue because he's going to leave now. So,
would you mind, before you move into the section, can I do some of my view on this?
Suren, Dr. Lionel is going to leave, so he is going to.
Oh, right. Okay.
Yeah,
okay.
I will quickly respond to the two issues. You know, one is that with regard to Comrade Chandrasekharan's suggestion about education, I fully agree that we need to do that. And actually, the JVP, when we were released in 1977, when we came out of prisons, you know, we started that. We established an organization called Human Rights Organization, led by Comrade Reggie Sirivadana and Sundar Desekara and so on. And we started that process because, you know, sort of when JVPs were arrested outstations by the police, they didn't know what to do, what their rights were, you know, whether a lawyer could appear for them, you know, whether their parents and others could be advised, you know, that these people have been arrested and so on. So we started that campaign, but what happened is, actually we, I'm just recollecting what we did. In 1981, we had a public program about human rights, you know, which was attended widely. And what JR did in 1977 and afterwards was to crush everything, you know, if you remember the referendum in 1980, was that 82, 83 referendum, you know, it smashed everything, human rights. So anyway, I think that's a good thing. And another suggestion would be the United Nations Secretary General, he has mentioned that human rights education, they will be supporting and, you know, promoting and even funding. So probably that's a good source, you know, to start with. And with regard to the sovereignty issue, it is something that has been built up for their own self. They are self-focused in the sense they want to protect their interests and privileges, so they will use this sovereignty argument. Now, if we look at, say, 1971 or even afterwards, right, in all the insurrections, people went to United Nations, Amnesty International, and other human rights organizations seeking support. The JPP went, right? Mahinda Rajapaksa went, and many other organizations. Whenever they are in the receiving end, they will seek. Then they don't have the sovereignty issue, right? When they are in power, when they repress others, then they say it is sovereign. We are a sovereign country, and others shouldn't interfere. It flows from actually this whole issue with regard to sovereignty started with the Third International. When Stalin, sort of revised the agenda of the whole process, and proletarian internationalism, as we identified those days, it was converted into something else. And now China is the main source, sort of propagating that countries are sovereign, they shouldn't be interfering. There is a dimension of truth in that, because most of the Western powers are interfering in other countries, and they have done so, and they will continue to do so. But at the same time, I think the other power blocks, like Russians or Chinese, they are also doing that. So there is no sovereignty in this world, because what we have a globalized world. We are interconnected. So if there is an issue somewhere, it is an issue which needs to be looked at by others as well. So I don't accept that sovereignty thing, sort of say.
So I'm not.
I have to leave because I have.
So.
Yes, I understand.
You can say yes or no, something like that. Now you refer to 1971. The matter was taken up to the international community. Now I know, for that matter, the organizations called HADRO, formed by Bala Thampo. I was activist in that, and I was involved in taking the matter. I was even campaigner for HADRO to the Amnesty International. Now that, and also Mahinda Rajapaksa going on JVP issues to the Human Rights Commission. Were these done with the consent of the JVP leadership, or the people who did it on their own?
Now, I can't say yes or no, because I was not a party of I was not with the JVP at that time. But I know Mahinda Rajapaksa was making use of that issue to become popular rather than genuinely interested in human rights. From the information I have, when I was in the JVP, during election campaigns and so on, there were people who came from Hambantota to work for these campaigns, and they have narrated horrendous stories about the criminal activities of Mahinda Rajapaksa. Right?
Sorry to interrupt everyone.
I don't think he has any concerns for human rights.
Okay, sorry to interrupt everyone. We have very limited time, so Dr. Brian need to go because he's lived in Australia. So we have to finish within 5 minutes time. Please take care about that, and we have to finish soon.
Only 5 minutes.
Yes.
Brian is 1 hour earlier than me. Here it is 11:33. I think there it is 10:33. Am I correct, Brian?
Yeah. So
yes.
Dr. Brian, you have to unmute. Dr. Brian, if you want to talk, please unmute.
Could you allow me to go? All right. Okay. Thank you very much for everybody.
Thank you, Lionel.
Nice to listen to you, Dr. Bobagi. Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you, Bobagi. Thank you so much.
Yeah. Right. Okay.
Right.
Brian.
Brian.
Dr. Brian, I think he has left.
Yeah.
I requested him to talk in writing as well, but he couldn't. I think he couldn't really participate for some reason. Okay. Okay. Anything else? Basu, sorry, we stopped you while we were talking. Do you want to go ahead with your comments?
No, I think I have finished my list. I need some clarification for Rirage, that matter, which is, worrying me in the last few days due to certain developments.
Okay.
So that's what I asked on the question of sovereignty and the taking up the issue of 1971, 32,
Okay.
the human rights and in Amnesty International.
Yeah.
So that I got it clear. That's all. Yeah.
Right, fine. And Mr. Surya Sekhar Mailwaganam has joined us from Jaffna, and he is an activist within the Jaffna progressive communities. Surya, do you have anything to share with us? You have to unmute. You have to unmute, Surya. Sorry, we can still hear you. You have to unmute.
All right. Okay. Can you hear now?
Yes, we can.
Just start with one question. You know, the question of teaching human rights outside the mainstream education system in Sri Lanka is nothing wrong with that, but it is we will be swimming against the current. The effectiveness of that is very limited. I'm not against it, but it is very limited. In Sri Lanka, we have a very comprehensive system education, free education. There are about 9,000 schools, and you know, it's very well established, but a lot of weaknesses, I agree. So many things are not taught. It is very exam oriented, tuition centered. So all those things are there, but to inject human rights awareness from outside through NGOs, from foreign countries, through United Nations and so on is not we'll be swimming against the current. That is number one point I wanted to make. And the second thing on the question of sovereignty, I think sovereignty is not unimportant in my opinion, but not the way that the government is thinking of sovereignty. Sovereignty is there. They are talking about sovereignty to protect their position in governing. That's all. But if you take the minority community, Tamils, Muslims, and estate plantation Tamils, they are talking about going to the United Nations and getting they are living in a kind of cuckoo world, getting their rights and solutions from the United Nations. Now that I think is also very dodgy. Now they are putting all the baskets in the United Nations. TNA is now split into three parties. All of them are more or less saying the same thing, except Gajendra Umar Ponnambalam is 100% relying on the UN to resolve the issues of the marginalized communities, Tamil community and Muslim community and so on. So personally, I think there is a issue of sovereignty, but there is also an international dimension involved in local in governing Sri Lanka. That is, UN can't be just put completely outside. International community has a Amnesty International, for example,
that become
has
a
role.
That is become a reality.
Yeah. So I think that TNA is going in the wrong way. They want to mobilize only the Tamil community, only the Tamil speaking community, Tamils and Muslims. But that is very divisive. We won't get very far unless we mobilize the Sinhalese people. And the Sinhalese people mobilizing the Sinhalese people also is equally dangerous and divisive. So I think we have to explore very seriously the possibility of national consensus, national approach, educating both the Tamils and the Sinhalese on respecting each other, respecting diversity, human rights, and so on. That is where there is a lack of research, lack of application. Now, I don't know whether you have heard, I just heard only last week, that they are going to do a march, it's called Unity March, from Dondra to pointed for.
So that has been mooted, but it's not sort of not come out seriously.
What do you see that? Is the government behind it?
Definitely, it's a government behind it.
It's a government, yeah. That's why, I mean, that is a very dangerous thing. No, we have to do that much ourselves, you know, Sinhala people and Tamil people and the Muslim people get together and do something on a national scale. We have to provide an alternative to what is being proposed by both sides. I think that you are in better placed, you know, people living in Europe, Britain, Australia, United States and other countries, European countries, should think in those terms. We are having a very dangerous situation here in Sri Lanka. Militarization has already gone too far, but it is going further. It's going to go further and further. We don't know where it will end up. It is a very dangerous situation.
And I think that's what exactly Divaharan was saying, that for the last 80 years, the democracy of all Ilanga people is too young. So we need to sort of educate not only the Tamils, but also the Sinhalese Muslims and everyone who participate in this process. And I think the development also has taken place since then, and there had been more rights issues that had been introduced. For example, ICCPR had been introduced in Sri Lanka, but that's, again, it is used against the people who are oppressed, rather than the government is using it as a weapon against us. So this is another issue that we have. So we need to see how we can protect the people and try and find internal mechanisms, how we can make it more efficient and how we can make it more sort of as a weapon to change things on the ground. And okay, it is a start today, and a lot of ideas have been taken in. And I think if possible, we should even bring out.
Comrade, can I just inform something?
Yes, go ahead.
Some time ago, about a couple of years ago, in Jaffna, they have, in a small scale, we have started an organization called Jaffna People for Coexistence. It's basically, we wanted to bring the marginalized Muslim communities to give them a say, you know, to give them confidence to take the center stage in Jaffna, because they are very, very marginalized. Particularly those Muslims who have returned from other parts of the country back to their own houses and so on, and they are struggling to get established. So we started this coexistence in which Muslims and Tamils are working reasonably closely, and we have invited from time to time people in the south, Sinhala people also, particularly the academics and the intelligentsia coming and taking part in the deliberations. But it is small. It has to be encouraged, I think. This has to be encouraged so that it can, one day it can spread into a national thing. And there are a lot of people, you know, people like Harini in the NPP.
Yeah.
She is also doing some very good work, particularly among the women's groups. And you would have heard her speech in the parliament, her maiden speech. She made a very good intervention. So there are forces all over. They are all scattered. They have to be coordinated in order to get a national alternative thinking in Sri Lanka. So I just wanted to let you know that what is happening here. People like Dr. Ahilan Kadarama are very active.
Yeah.
And intellectuals are slowly trying to get into the Jaffna University and create a different atmosphere there.
That's a positive indication.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Charles,
anybody else?
If no other questions, I would like to say a couple of words related to the discussion. Anyone got a question? So
Can I ask one question?
Yes, more than.
Okay, a quick one. I know we talked about education, human rights. I totally agree. I mean, I like what Mr. Mailvanam said. I totally agree on all that. But somehow that seems to be, this is not blaming. I know the blame is, if there is a blame, this has to be taken by all the communities. I accept that. But there is some singular Buddhist fundamentalist elements, which people say starting from the temples itself. I'm not so familiar with that. This is so, so whatever you say, ultimately, that forces, I sometimes look at that, some salient nationalistic force, which could be invoked at will whenever wanted. Current government could do it, previously could do it. That force could be invoked, and that force could prevent any progressive change happening in the country. People say that start from the Buddhist schools themselves. How can that be addressed, that kind of a force?
But you mean Buddhist schools in Buddhist temples?
I think so. I mean, not that that's what I hear. That singular Buddhist salient nationalism, which ultimately the politicians could invoke, like what the Rajapakshas did, and then that stopped the progressive change in the country.
Yeah,
I think it is not coming from the Buddhist temples themselves or the chief of the Buddhist temples, whatever it is, but it is this in the recent elections, the Rajapaksas conducted their campaign from the temples. They use the temples as their base, as Bandaranaike used the Buddharakkhita Thero and the Kalaniya temple in the 1950s to get the support of the Sinhalese people. So that's being done now. I think even that trend, the Buddhist monks in various temples have realized it, the fallacy of it. Now that.
But what is true in a very big way is that we have in Sri Lanka denominational schools. There are Catholic schools, Protestant schools, Hindu schools, Muslim schools, and Buddhist schools. Now, that has gone very far. It is very well established. It's very difficult to reverse. But unfortunately, that is also very divisive. Divisive. So, I mean, I don't think if this gentleman was referring to that I think is too late.
Temple involvement in the temples, Buddhist temples.
If it is only temple, I don't see, I agree with Masood that I don't see that happening actually. Temples, Buddhist temples, I don't think they have.
It was for some time during the last 2 elections. So I don't know whether that trend is still continuing. Because
even young children are being taught.
Even the political campaigns have taken place in
that is different. Political campaigns.
Yeah, Crete and the Buddhist monks were involved.
Even young children are being told. They send messages through the young children to their parents. So, it's the tactic that they use.
Yeah, and I think Suresh has something to say about Brian.
And, let's hear Suresh.
Yeah.
Thank you. Today's question is, at the moment, there are two communities there. End of the day, there are common human rights kind of things going on. The question is why? What is the reason? When something happened in South, North, we keep quiet. Where something happening in North, why South people are keeping quiet? I believe there's 2 main reasons. One is the awareness and other one is the attitude. Awareness changes relatively we can do, but attitude change take times. Say for example, awareness, of course, we can, education is one of the key things what we can do. When you talk about the education, here we are talking is evidence-based education. So when you talk about the Mahavamsa, so a lot of people interest in poetic related words or history related to exaggerate something. nice to give some kind of a heroism and so on. But in long run, that's a really bit dangerous in the sense thinking world is like Chera Chola Pandian or Gemini, that kind of a thing, but reality is not. So the evidence base is important. When you talk about the Mahavamsa or whatever it is, whether this is supported by archaeology, that kind of a thing. Education is not necessarily, it should be based on evidence. That's first. Second one, in small age, because you said it's come from small age, because the ethic, better citizenships, that kind of thing start from kindergarten to further up. Very difficult to change that kind of a things in university level or whatever it is, I agree.
Okay.
But the awareness, other one, is the communication. Media's not playing their part, really. What is I just want to share some of my experience in Polonnaruwa. During 80s, 86, I think, I was a civil engineer doing rural water supply sanitation in Polonnaruwa area. So that is the time some extreme groups came and killed number of Sinhalese citizens, and pretty much they cut the pregnant ladies, and the child almost dropped out. So this has really happened that time. I was going with my own group team, others all Sinhalese. So in Madaragiri, we lost the way and asked a mother carrying a child, and we asked the lady, how to go to the Madaragiri town. Then the child, very small child, in mother's hand, this particular baby asked, "Me mamala apeva maraida." So I'll repeat this one in English as well. These uncles will kill us. Or in the mama in a kolvinamond. So the idea is, they never, others all Sinhalese. So it's a thing, two things I understood. So still, whatever happened for child, if assume I am that extreme, but that gave an respect to me, call me mama, rather than this bloody extreme. So that's one of the things. Second one, this kind of things, how many people in North they know? So not only this is happening, this kind of things, that's happening in South as well. Therefore, communication is there. Human right violation happened in all part of Sri Lanka. We have to recognize that. So the media should play a part on awareness. The second one is attitude. Because when Channel 4 publish, put their videos, a lot of people said, no, it's never happened. It's a fake and so on. A lot of my best friends, they talked about. But during 80s, I was in the Polonnaruwa again, Kandy and so on. I saw my own this thing. In a lane, if one Suresh there, all Suresh pulled out and shot, naked and so on. So the problem is even single community, it's happened to them themselves. But when it's happened to say Tamils, they're not agreeing really this can be happened there. So it's an attitude problem or sort of a herd mentality kind of things. We want to come out and talk with more this thing. These are the things happen and would happen. So we want to work as a community. So therefore, awareness, we have to talk through. Media should talk through the real experience and real things rather than telling one side story. The second one, we have to change our attitude. When it's happened to me, that is an issue. When it's happened to someone else, it's not my business. It's wrong. Because whatever happened to them, because some community previously, other community affected, they just enjoyed. But that one same thing happened to that community, then they realized what mistake they did. So therefore, it's all happened to anyone. History can repeat. So we have to think we won't work as a community and understand, change our attitude. We want to work for the general humans rather than looking for me and my family. So if we look after others, then one day it's coming to me, they will be there for me to support. If you work only me, end of the day, me. Thank you.
I can tell you something very interesting on that front, Suresh. It's a very new phenomena. During our time, there were no university in Jaffna. Every Tamil went to universities in the south, Peradeniya, Colombo, and so on and so forth. Now we have a university which is actually fairly large. It has got the second largest number of faculties after Peradeniya. So now in the science faculty, more than 50% of the students are Sinhalese. In the medical faculty also same. In the law faculty and in the management faculty, a bit less. But in the arts faculty, it is almost now 100% Tamils only. So what is happening now, there's a mingling. The southern students, the Sinhala students are now closely moving with Tamil students and establishing a very healthy relationship. It's amazing, you know, and it is actually changing. You know, the Sinhala students are staying with in digs with Tamil families. And recently, I don't know whether you saw that video, a Sinhala girl who studied in Jaffna University, and then she stayed with a Tamil family, and she comes from Embelipitia in Ratnapur. And then she gave a TV program. In the interview, asked, why did you go to Jaffna? When you have so many Sinhala universities in the south and Peradeniya, Colombo and so on, why did you go to? So she said, when I was doing O-level, I always wanted to, I saw there's a bus always going from Embelipitia to Jaffna. So she was telling, wow, I want to one day go to Jaffna, take this bus and go to Jaffna. You know, a youth, young dream. So eventually she said, she came to Jaffna. Then the guy asked, why did you go to Jaffna? I mean, 2 years after the war, did you not fear, and were you not afraid people will kill you and all sorts of things? And that girl says, no, she said, I was very happy, and the mother, the young mother, gives me the 2 babies to look after for half a day, and she trusts me, she goes away, she gives me the best food, she was very kind, and so on. She is telling in the television. So
that's right. No, those things are happening, you know, human, sorry.
Not in the north. It was not in the north. North, it is only happening now. You know, then some students, Sinhala students coming to the north is a very new phenomenon. So I think this will create understanding, mutual understanding, and you know, that we can live together, we can think nationally rather than regionally, and so on. It's happening. I can confirm. I got many stories to tell, but I don't want to take your time. That's very encouraging.
Really now, when you really, actually the education system is one that needs a radical change. I don't know when it is going to happen. I can give you, if there is time, I can just give you a small example. My children were at DSN Nayak. They were in the Tamil medium. In the Tamil medium classes, they were Tamil students. Tamils were Tamil students. Now that there had been the language brought an understanding. You know, they were good friends. Even B.H. Amil's son was a good friend of my son. They moved together in all activities. But I was sort of, I have been a regular visitor because of some responsibilities I have as a parent. When I was going one day, my children, as well as some few Tamil students, they came and said, Uncle, and the park in the Sinhala kadika varanga. Adana prachana. Then now in the Sinhala street, there are Muslims and Sinhalese. There are some children who are one or two my own friends' children. And I knew that. So I went, okay, now I went with these boys. And I asked them, now they are Sinhalese and Muslims were there, speaking in Sinhala. Malanako uncle, me demolo matagane, apitagane now. Now see how this language has divided people, even the small children. So the system of education. So I don't know how we are going to bring about this change. That's the situation.
It's a long-term mission.
Yeah. Of course, the system of education introduced in 1960 completely laid the foundation for the communities to divide and mistrust beyond besides other matters.
Yeah. The linked language was destroyed. English.
Welcome, Raj. Anyone else want to add on to this?
Actually, if you take the English education also, it's not great. You know, they never taught the English children the colonial history. English education also was very biased. Agree or not?
English education biased, I don't know. How can I say? You know, when we were students, I remember studying, reading S.I.P.D. Silva's Ceylon history. It was promoting, you know, it was not promoting any sort of bias against any of this community or one against the other or something. It was generally history.
Yeah. These things came after
some discussion. They were talking about the war. It only mentioned it as a war, not as a,
This is a recent phenomena after, not even after 56. It is well after that. This present situation.
Now, if I have time, can I ask on Mrs. Suryasekharam is there?
Yeah.
Have you see the divide between the Tamil community and the Sinhalese community? Now the Muslims have come in. Now, in the down south, mostly Sinhala majority trade unions are fighting on sort of foreign investment, for instance, this container terminal issue and other issues, right? Now, I don't see any form of thinking or even a word said from the Tamil politicians or civil activities. Not only Tamil politicians, Tamil activities, even among the Muslims, about these struggles, the economic conditions that affects all. What is that? How can that be promoted? Of course, I have started in various forums of the Muslims that you are now only talking of your own rights because on this issue, you are not talking the human rights of the Tamils, nor the economic conditions of the people, estate Tamils, and so on. How can this dialogue be promoted? How can we sort of make them start? Then only there can be one method, one issue on which this divide between Sinhalese and Tamils and Muslims and Sinhalese can be sort of reduced to some extent. How can we start that dialogue? Getting the people in the north and the Tamils.
The last march that was carried out by P2P, they managed to bring in the Muslim, and the Muslims played an equal role. But we couldn't really go to an extent of convincing the Sinhalese to take part equally. And not only the problem we had of they're coming up with batons and stones and even petrol cans. Thank God nobody died, but there was attempts against those people on the ground during the march time. And so we need to not only start joining. First of all, we need to repair many of the problems that had been caused by the conflict. There had been losses from the both sides, and if we need to act against the state, we need to come up with a program that will not weaken us, that will bring unity among us, and that can address all the issues of the people. So I think it is a good start, and we had been talking about this for donkeys years now, maybe 45 years, myself and probably Masuk or Raj.
Even us who are here, we also have to discuss on these economic issues and various other things. China's intrusion, India's expansion, interfering in Sri Lankan economic. These things we also have to discuss and be prepared to tell other people.
Yeah, well, this forum is particularly about the discussion and how do we come up with policies that can change the things on the ground. So rather than the activism, we are bringing the activists and the academics together to bring about the change, to put forward alternative ideas that they can consider. So please use us as much as possible. Give us enough pressure to bring about changes in our attitude, in our policies, and so on. We are willing to listen, and we are very accommodative, and the democracy within the organization is there. It is not run by one particular policy or ideology. So we are open-minded, and we are willing to listen to all the people. Anything else, Ranjit, you want to add? You're muted. You're muted. Okay.
Sorry, that's very interesting to listen to all of you, and I'm very happy to be with you. As only what I have to say this, I mean, next time we can maybe a little bit talk about this and history and what happened, in which way we learn history, this kind of things. But Mr. Mailwa,
Suri Mailwa.
I'm sorry, I can't read here.
Yeah.
Suri, sir. Yeah.
But I think he's right. What he told, it's very, very good. But I mean, this is what we need. And I think he told that he has a little organization, Jaffna People
for coexistence.
So maybe you can publish this address to the South also, to other organizations, because there are many little organizations in South. They would like to work with progressive Tamils in North, so that maybe within this kind of, how you say, work, you can bring a bridge to this both sides. This address maybe you have to publish.
Yeah, who shall I give it to?
Maybe Charles, or who is organizing?
Yeah. Okay, Charles. Charles, you keep in touch with me.
Yeah.
Charles, are you in my Facebook? I do a lot of writing.
Yeah. I watch you on. I follow you on Facebook.
Yeah. So now Charles, you were mentioning about the economic and the discussion in relation to India, China, and Russia, and US, and so on. Now that is something that we need to have a general discussion. We may not have an immediate answer, but at least at least in the past, long past, we had the non-aligned conference or non-aligned group. Now we don't have anything like that now. India has gone into the America's pocket. Sri Lanka is unable to hold neutrality. They are gravitating towards China. And so the whole Indian Ocean is becoming kind of a militarized, there's a potential, kind of a war zone, conflict zone. So this kind of things we can discuss, I think. What are the options for Sri Lanka?
I'm very sorry. We are just moving from our human and I'm very sorry to disturb you guys. And
okay.
Yeah, my name is Nila here. Thank you for everyone coming and join with us today. Our main goal is today, we have to talk about the humanity and how we can improve the humanity and how we could able to join together all the community in Sri Lanka and how we could able to progress in the future and how we could able to educate each and everyone in Ceylon. That is only our intention today. So I think we have to stop regarding that all other matters at the present today. We are happy to welcome you. We already running some classes every Sundays at 3 o'clock. And we are very happy to invite you and we can able to discuss regards the politics and historical evidence-based information. And any Tamil
இதையும் சொல்லுங்க நிலா. First of all, I just want to inform about the Prime A+. I will. My time is finished, and I will
go ahead.
tell in a couple of words. So 10 minutes one, I will do it in a couple of minutes. This is not only politics. This particular Prime A+ and we have 3 areas we are concentrating on. Today this particular seminar is related to the human rights, constitutions, and political development. That group organized this particular seminar. And also we have other 3 groups. Other one is education, health, and sustainable living. And the third one is economic, economic activities, hunger, as well as sort of a skill development. And the last one is the environment. We already run 2 seminars on economics, and today and previously we did on constitutions and human rights this week. And also now next one we want to do something on environment. So please keep that one in mind. Similarly, if you are interested in any of these groups, please let Nila or Charles or me or whoever you want, Tubagaran Master. So then we can include yourself. And political group is reasonably at the moment in a shape. I think the second one I want to encourage, if anyone interested in environmental side, please let us know. We want to start forming that one very soon. So if anyone have any burning question on Prime A+, please ask. Otherwise, I will give to Nila to finish it off. You have another 4 minutes. Yeah. So any questions, guys, about this particular? So this is the Prime A+ is a policy research foundation and a think tank. So basically we are covering UN's 17 Sustainable Development Goals into these 4 major areas. So it's not only politics, it's, in other words, this is an institution for nation building. So currently we are very short of policies. Whoever doing policy making pretty much interested in how they can come to the next 5 years to the power rather than thinking about policies. So the idea is whether we can educate citizen leaders to understand policies, then they can challenge their politicians or help them, whatever. So it's a purpose of that. So it's a research foundation and think tank. This is not part of any political party, but definitely politics is the key aspect. And also it's not going to deal with this one. This is only the policy. Whoever do the project they can do, or whoever want to do the advocacy they can do. This provide evidence and information, that's all. So please, 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 I want you all to come and join because we all love our country. We can do something for our country back.
What's the name of the organization? It's called, what do you call it? Yes.
This is called Prime A+. If Charles got the email, then we can send some information. It's basically a policy, research, innovation.
Right, okay. Yeah. Thank you.
Political but non-party citizen group.
Okay.
வணக்கம். நாங்கள் பிரைம் A+ல இருந்து கதைக்கிறோம். இதன் நோக்கம் ஏற்கனவே டாக்டர் சுரேன் சொன்ன மாதிரி தனிப்பட்ட எந்த ஒரு கட்சிக்காகவோ அல்லது தனிப்பட்ட எந்த ஒரு குடும்பத்தை ஊக்குவிக்கும் நோக்குடனோ நாங்கள் இங்கே பணியாற்றவில்லை. இலங்கையில் வாழும் அனைத்து மக்களும் ஒற்றுமையாகவும் எதிர்காலத்தில் நல்லதொரு எதிர்காலத்தை கட்டும் இந்த குழுவானது உருவாக்கப்பட்டிருந்தது. இந்த 1 வருடங்களாக நாங்கள் பயணித்துக் கொண்டிருக்கின்றோம். இப்போது கடந்த அக்டோபர் மாதத்திலிருந்து இந்த குழுவானது தனிப்பட்ட ரீதியான குழுக்களாக பிரிந்து குறித்த நடவடிக்கைகளுக்காக பாடுபட்டு கொண்டிருக்கின்றது. அதன் அடிப்படையில் இன்று நாங்கள் இலங்கையில் நிகழ்கின்ற மனித உரிமைகள் மீறல்களுக்காக எவ்வாறு நாங்கள் அனைவரும் இணைந்து குரல் கொடுப்போம் என்பதற்காகத்தான் இன்றைய கருத்தரங்கானது உருவாக்கப்பட்டிருந்தது. அதில் மிகச் சிறப்பாக டாக்டர் லேனர்ட் புபகே அண்ட் டாக்டர் பிரையன் வந்து கலந்து கொண்டிருந்தார்கள். அவர்களது கருத்தை பதிவு செய்திருந்தார்கள். அதில் மிகவும் பிடித்தமாக இருந்த விடயம் மகாவம்சத்தை நாங்கள் எவ்வாறு வெற்றி கொண்டு மக்களுக்கு நாங்கள் நல்ல ஒரு விழிப்புணர்வை உருவாக்க முடியும் என்பதனை அவர்கள் கூட குறிப்பிட்டிருந்தார்கள். அதன் அடிப்படையில் தான் நாங்கள் எங்களது பயணத்தை மேற்கொள்ள வேண்டும் என்று நாங்கள் ஆழமாக நம்புகின்றோம். இன்று கூட மனித உரிமைகள் இலங்கையில் மீறப்படுகின்றது என்ற அடிப்படையில் புலம்பெயர் தேசத்தில், குறிப்பாக பிரித்தானியாவில் அம்பிகை செல்வகுமார் என்கின்ற ஒரு பெண் தனது உணவு தவிர்ப்பு போராட்டத்தை நேற்று ஆரம்பித்திருக்கின்றார். அது மிகவும் கவலையானதும் துன்பகரமானதுமான ஒரு நிகழ்வாக எங்களுக்கு இருக்கின்றது. அவர் ஒரு சமூக பெண்ணாகத்தான் இருந்தார். அவர் ஒரு ஹியூமன் ரைட்ஸுக்காகத்தான் பாடுபட்ட ஒரு பெண். அவர் கடந்த 94ஆம் ஆண்டிலிருந்து புலம்பெயர் தேசத்தில் வாழ்ந்து கொண்டிருக்கின்றார். அவர் ஆரம்பிக்கப்பட்ட இந்த நிகழ்வானது இப்போதும் நடைபெற்றுக் கொண்டிருக்கின்றது. அதன் நிமித்தம் யாழ்ப்பாணத்தில் கூட இன்று வேறொரு மக்கள் கூட்டம் உணவு தவிர்ப்பு போராட்டத்தில் ஈடுபட்டு கொண்டிருக்கின்றார்கள். நாங்கள் அனைவரும் எமது ஜனநாயக ரீதியிலான உரிமைகளுக்காக மட்டுமே, மனித உரிமைகளை மீறல்களுக்காக மட்டுமே போராடி கொண்டிருக்கின்றோமே தவிர யாரையும் காயம் செய்வதற்காகவோ அல்லது யாருக்கும் துன்பம் கொடுப்பதற்காகவோ நாங்கள் போராடவில்லை என்பதனை சகோதரர்களுக்கு நாங்கள் தெரிவிக்க வேண்டியவர்களாக இருக்கின்றோம். இன்று இந்த நிகழ்வில் கலந்து கொண்டு எங்களுடன் தோழமையாக இன்று கரம் கொடுத்த உங்கள் அனைவருக்கும் எனது மனப்பூர்வமான நன்றிகள். நன்றி, வணக்கம்.
குறிப்பாக மாசுக் நீங்கள் வந்து you did the interpretation, and also many thanks for Charles for leading this one. Thank you. Nandri Bomstuti.
Thank you.
Bomstuti. I just learned yesterday.
Thank you everyone. Thank you everyone for having me.
Thank you, Masood.
Nice to see your face, Suri.
Yeah, nice to see you also after a long time.
I hope you are keeping well. I read your Facebook updates. Yeah. Okay. We'll be in touch.
Thank you.
Again.
Okay.
Thank you for everyone to participate today. I'm just going to...
Goodbye.
And also thanks for Nila as well to organize all the things. Thank you.
Yeah, she's doing a good job.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
We have a class today at 3 o'clock. If anyone wish to join, it's Zoom ID. You can note it. 845-9070-7639. I have my phone number 0044-74-122-59621. So if anyone want to join the class, please come and join with us. Or if you want any questions, please, you can ask us. Then we are happy to help you. Thank you. So I'm going to close it and we will start the class at 3 o'clock. Thank you.